a little off his rocker. Jurors grilled over views of Elon Musk for shareholder trials. So this is actually a big deal regarding the Tesla slash Elon Musk trial. And if you don't know what it is, basically Elon tweeted out, hey, we're going to take Tesla private at 420 a share. And a bunch of people were buying based on this. And essentially that ended up not happening because evidently the funding wasn't there, so they didn't have enough money to actually do this. It's actually very similar to what happened with Twitter, where Elon is tweeting out, hey, we're going to buy Twitter, etc. But this time he was forced to follow through. The thing is, that's also interesting, is Elon is trying to say, hey, no, people said they were going to give me the money, but said people are not backing up Elon, so he might be kind of on his own here. And essentially this is on trial. When the jurors were asked, what do you think about Elon Musk? These were the words that came up. Narcissistic, unpredictable, a little off his rocker, a genius, and another arrogant rich guy. So we'll keep following this one. I think this is a big one. And in fact, this is not the only thing that's going on with Elon. There's another thing which I think is even bigger news. Essentially, a Tesla engineer. So this is a Tesla insider, right? A Tesla engineer who worked on a video in 2016 showing Tesla's FSD. This is an important video because basically it gave the impression slash illusion that Tesla, essentially had robot driving it basically. And essentially what's going on as well is that they're under a criminal investigation by the government to whether or not this is false advertising. Now, the Tesla engineer, I read through the stuff, you guys can read as well, but I'll just tell you the basic gist of it, was saying that it was staged. They were saying, because the video was staged, that means, and they were saying essentially what they did was like they 3D mapped the route ahead of time. Also, too, they ran several tests and they had to have the driver intervene. So basically, to finally get the thing to work, it took multiple times. The thing was crashing into fences when it was parking, etc. So basically, the car didn't work as the video shows. And so it's a bit of misleading. And so whether or not it's full-blown false advertising and criminal, that's up to the courts to decide. But I'm just saying a Tesla engineer is coming out and saying the video that we made was all staged, and that is a big deal. Now, in other Tesla news, and I get it, guys, if you watch the Tesla pumper channels, they may say, bad news, you should buy Tesla stock. Good news, you should buy Tesla stock. If it's up 70%, which is, from here, you should buy Tesla stock. If it's down 7%, you should buy Tesla stock. They just tell you to buy all day, every day, and you have no basis of reality. The reality is they cut prices, okay? And you got this article here. So it is true that maybe more people in China will buy Teslas. Totally true. But when you cut prices, you cut the amount of money you're going to make on said cars. Also, there's a really important thing to point out. I see it a lot in Tesla Pumper Channel comments where people say, oh, the Wall Street's all corrupt, the stock market doesn't make any sense, they don't understand Tesla, Tesla's awesome, it's growing every year, don't you see? There's one real clear thing that I want to make, actually two things I want to mention. One is, if Tesla stock was overvalued for a long time, that means it has a long ways to fall, right? Overvalued meaning that you were paying too much for said stock. You're paying too much for how much the company is going to make in the future. Also, too, if they're cutting prices, eating in on their profits, and essentially, the market's trying to figure out what is a fair value for this thing. Another thing that also is important as well. At one point, Tesla was crazy amount in value compared to other car companies. I was looking at this here. I'll read this to you guys. It says Tesla was at one point worth more than Toyota, Honda, Volkswagen, Mercedes, BMW, Ford, and General Motors combined. How does that make any sense? And I mean, I'm serious. How does that make any sense? And I guess if you're a complete Tesla bull, you say, oh, Chris, you don't understand. Tesla's more than a car company. It's completely awesome. And it's worth more than, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 car makers combined. That's hard for me to swallow. And it was obvious it was overvalued. The PEs were way too high. And now here's just a general rule of thumb. So in the past, I remember when Tesla was like some ludicrous, PE ratios of like 150, something of that nature. It was like ridiculous high. And I would always tell people, you want to make sure that the growth rate is higher than the PE if you're interested in said stock, right? So at 150, that means like, okay, so do you think Tesla's going to grow, say, like 150% in earnings? And it just never really seemed to make sense to me. At the moment, if you're saying trading Tesla at a 30 PE, something like that, at least you're getting more reasonable. But even then, that's very generous. Because remember, oftentimes the Tesla pumpers will say, well, Chris, you're so dumb. Tesla sales are up 40% year over year. Okay, but is that profits? Is that earnings? There's a big difference between your sales, say 40%, but maybe your earnings are only going to grow maybe, 8 to 15% a year. Who knows what it's going to be? I can't predict the future 100%, but I want to guys give you a general idea of how to understand this. There's a difference between sales and earnings. Please understand that. Also, too, this is an interesting one as well. There was a long article about this, and that's sort of where I pulled that quote from the automakers. Essentially, this is a whole thing about interviews with different people who have owned a Tesla, and essentially, do they trust the FSD or do they not? One of the big things I thought was interesting is essentially it goes into how all of these people essentially believing in Elon Musk were essentially serving as beta testers. And for people who like Elon Musk, I mean, I get it. You're working for him. You're helping out the guy. You're basically making him rich, right? And unfortunately, though, the system doesn't really work as intended, right? And there's been a lot of accidents and a lot of lawsuits. And kind of what's going on right now is people are just really, really disappointed with, the stock performance, and also too what's going on with Twitter. It's a disaster, a real disaster. And the basic gist is that to make the deal work, they have to take on a bunch of debt, and they have to pay a whole bunch of interest on said debt, and interest rates are going up, and everyone's worried whether or not Twitter/Elon Musk is good for the money. So that's what's going on. You got trials. You got an engineer who's speaking out saying it could be all a sham. You also have customers who are unhappy with essentially being beta testers, and the product doesn't work as advertised. And then you have Twitter just a drain on Elon and Tesla. So love to hear your thoughts on these things. I get it. The puppers are going to tell you everything is good and just keep buying, but I try to give you the best news that I can. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.